Hey everyone, DCE Katie from Emmanuel Lutheran Church with Shawn McCowan from Standard Cross Counseling. The next video in our video series here, talking about mental health things, emotional things. And one of the topics that was suggested to us recently was to have a conversation about pride and the power that pride has in people's lives, the role that it plays. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Um, we know, of course, in a biblical sense that God's pretty clear on pride and proud people and the way that can trip you up. And so, Shawn, just from your perspective as a Christian counselor and helping people work through emotions and things like that, what do you commonly see where pride is a factor?
Pretty much everywhere, Katie. Pride is what caused Lucifer to fall and become Satan. Pride is what makes us prioritize our self and our thoughts and our feelings, even when they're perfectly valid to want to focus on them. The desire to put ourselves first is our greatest example of pride of self.
So I think we generally speaking, we have a pretty good understanding and definition of what it means to be prideful, where that shows through in people. But I was reading something interesting just this morning about pride and the ways that it comes out in a person. And this author suggested that even in like self degradation and self criticism, that is often rooted in pride.
It's really tricky stuff. There's a rich man, a leader in the church that Jesus is observing when people are giving and they're tithing. And he gets up and he says, "Oh Lord, thank you so much for all of your blessings." It's Thanksgiving week, right? So happy Thanksgiving, by the way. Thank you for all your blessings, and thank you for making me the way you did, and thank you for not making me like this poor soul here. It's almost sounds like a genuine prayer of thanksgiving, but it wasn't. And Jesus pointed it out as such. He said, don't be like that person who does that, to be heard and so that he could be uplifted and being better than someone else. And so when I'm putting myself down, maybe, this isn't all the time, but maybe I'm saying that so someone else will say, no, 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 you're wonderful. Now, some people really are struggling with self-image and who they are, and that's a different story. We're not talking about that. When somebody is trying to recognize the quality of their character and who they are and reestablishing themselves as a person of God, a child of God, that's a whole different battle that people are going to go through, and pride may or may not be part of that. But when it comes to a person who's self-deprecating, repeatedly or making it the focus of who they are, there have been times where that's come from a person who is saying, "Oh, I'm just terrible." The other end of it is they're using it as an excuse to say, "Well, well, I'm just awful, and so I guess I'm just a terrible person." In the end, that's in pride too, because then instead of what God wants us to be and who God made us to be and what Christ did to save us, we're resorting back to ourselves.
I think, in fact, you have even posed that question to me before. Is it about you, or is it about who Jesus has called you to be and how He's called you to serve? And so, yeah, I appreciate that, and I knew going into this video that this information was going to be very much stuff that I can use as well. I guess maybe one final question then, as people take what you just said and process that and work through that, then where would you draw a line between pride and humility, and how do you, I guess, categorize those correctly then?
Humility is something that we can strive for, and something maybe practice makes perfect isn't such a bad idea. It comes from the word, that same word that we get hummus, by the way, and it means as onto the ground. So when Paul talks about it, he talks about having your face like to the ground. That's the level. That's level of humility. And sometimes when I picture people being humble, I picture a football player scores a touchdown and he gets in the end zone and he puts his head down in front of everybody. So is he being humble? That's not what humble meant. Humble meant lowly. So am I seeing myself as lowly, but a beautiful creation of God? So my value as a person, as opposed to pride, my value as a person is coming from what God made and who God made and what that purpose is. And if it's ever what I want to see in the mirror and what I want to be as a person and what I feel aspire to be or what makes me feel good about myself, it's probably pride. It's the biggest battle. If you're going through it, it's the biggest battle in the history of earth. It's the biggest battle in the history of heaven. And so it'll go on until this whole battle's over. So if you're struggling with it or you hear these things and you think, well, oh my gosh, well, where do I stand on this? Join the club. We're all doing that.
Yep. Yeah, certainly a lot more could be said about pride, but I think that's a good start for us at least.
Mhm.
So, blessings to all of you this week. Happy Thanksgiving again, and we will see you next time.
Happy Thanksgiving.